thankful and proud to have you, on for today. And we're going to get right into it. Welcome anybody who's watching. We have Eze Jackson, of course, one of the city's best. And also, we're so thankful today. I'm Dermell Brunson, one of your hosts, your co-host with Eze Jackson. We have Ms. Jessica Solomon from Art and Praxis here with us today. And we're so excited. LTYC is, lovingly pushing forward with the show about tomorrow to discuss the future of the Black family in Baltimore. And we want to send a shout out to From Baltimore with Love, our executive producer, Mr. Brian Greenspan Dawkins. And we love Morgan State, who is a part of the foundation of this show, their School of Urban Social Work, Black Arts District. Give a shout out to Lady Breon pushing away at the beautiful work, as well as a shout out to our sponsor, Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center, Epic Fam. And, we're going to get right into it, today, talking about beauty, talking about love, talking about the future of the Black family in Baltimore. One of my experiences in Baltimore is deeply rooted in something that's happening right now with someone we all love in pop culture, and that's Mr. Earl Simmons, DMX. Yeah. So we want to start the show by sending prayers, love, all of the beautiful energy and spirits that we can send to brother DMX right now in his time of need. Again, in Baltimore and grown up in Baltimore, several people in my life, family members, friends, folks I looked up to have struggled with addiction. And addiction is a very powerful stronghold that can get any of us at any time if we aren't aware and aren't paying attention to our habits. And so we've long sent love and thoughts to DMX. He's been very vulnerable and open with us about his struggles for years. And so to get the news today that he's, fighting for his life right now is, very hard to hear. And I'm sending, all the comfort to the family and to the people who care about Earl the most. And I'm calling him Earl on purpose because we know him as DMX, but he's Earl. He's Earl Simmons. He's somebody's son, somebody's, uncle and father. And so we wanted to start the show there because I know that both of you have in your work, both you, Eze, and today's guest, again, Jessica Solomon from Art and Praxis. I know you guys being in Baltimore have experienced and paid attention to how detrimental addiction can be to the community.
Yeah, for sure. I wanna read this quote from DMX that I found this morning. I was like, I was telling my brother, I said, I feel emotional about it like it's my real uncle, like it's my real, you know what I mean? And he reminded me, he was like, bro, like he's a part of our childhood, man. Like we grew up with him, you know what I'm saying? And he has a quote that says, to live is to suffer. To survive, well, that's to find meaning in the suffering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's so heavy because, when you talk about addiction, you talk about people trying to escape the hardships of their suffering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just having a conversation last night with Al Rogers Jr. about how unprecedented what DMX did was. Like DMX in 99, 2000, in a year span, DMX dropped 2 albums at a time when that was not normal.
Both of them top 10 on the charts.
Both of them top 10 on the charts. And at that time, when the second album dropped, we had just gotten people like D'Angelo and Method Man's sophomore album after waiting 5-6 years. You know what I mean? Like between Method Man's albums, the 1 and 2 are 94, 2000. D'Angelo drops 95. His second album, Voodoo, doesn't come out until 2000. You know what I'm saying? And that was the norm. You know what I mean? 4 or 5 years at the most, you get a sophomore album. Yeah. And here's DMX stepping into the deal with 4 or 5 albums worth of material already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I said, I thought how do you do that without drugs? You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm.
how does somebody do that without drugs? And honestly, I really believe that if you did take drugs out of it, DMX would be one of the most dangerous record execs right now in the game. You know what I mean? I mean, so much so that he went through what he went through and came home, and Def Jam they had to give him his money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, they you know, under contract, they tried not to, but they had to pay that man. You know what I mean?
Because he had earned the label so much money, and then
Yeah,
he was featuring on all that Bad Boy stuff. He was featured on all the Rough Rider stuff, and I mean, he really was a part of that late '90s push that saved Def Jam.
yeah,
You know, Ludacris and DMX and all of those artists that really saved Def Jam under the leadership of Leo Cohen and our Baltimore's own Mr. Kevin Liles at the time. They saved Def Jam and saved the rap industry, put it into a new lane. And so if I like how you said it, man, it's like he do feel like he a part of our family. You know, it's like when
yeah.
you hear that news, you like, dang, you know, you just like you don't want to hear that. It's like you don't want to hear that, you know. I don't know, but you know, we want to send it, but I'm tying it into the work that you do, Jess,
Yeah.
because and the work that Easy you do and the work that we do with LTYC is that we care about people, right?
Yeah.
Right. What I it's interesting, like when somebody, one of us, something happens, a lot of stories about who they are as a person come out, right? And I'm learning just listening to you two about that critical moment that he produced those 2 albums. And I hope that this is an opportunity for folks who are grappling with addiction to really start to think about healing, and not just think about it, but move towards it. I want folks who are interested in music and business to start thinking about their work differently as well. I hope that this is a moment for the culture while we are holding space for him and his family.
Yeah.
Personally, like, and somebody who is proximate to addiction, meaning that, you know, has been in my family. You know, I live in a community where I can walk down the street, you know, and see people in what my friends like to call transcendence, right? Because I recognize that these are people who are trying to escape. And so, you know, it may not cost a lot for me to escape if I take this drug or this pill or whatever. And so, like, that's how I think about it. And I also think about, what does it mean? I was at like a happy hour or something years ago when I had just started working in philanthropy, and somebody introduced me, and this woman, she was like, "Oh, congratulations, you made it." And I'm like, what does making it mean, right? Like, I'm like, sis, my aunt might be out, you know, on Pennsylvania Avenue. Like, that's not, what does it mean to make it? And like, as we think about Black family, like what's my responsibility to my family, and how can I use my gifts in service of community, and how do we stay connected when it's hard sometimes, right? Like, it's hard sometimes to be connected. So just all of this is giving me a lot to think about. And I'm really appreciating where it's taking me in this conversation. So
Yeah, and I like how you said it. Like, how can we use our gifts to, you know, make room for us and bring us before great people, and now serve, right? And
right.
Again, we're having a reflection starting the show off. If you're just tuning in, this is the show about tomorrow. Dermell Brunson here with co-host Eze Jackson. Our guest today, Jessica Solomon, art in Praxis, and we're just discussing right now, following the vibes and the energy of what's happening for something close to us in pop culture, as you know, 80s babies, 90s babies, remembering the impact of music for a brother who's right now, reports are saying, again, we can't always trust all the reports, but the reports right now are saying that he is definitely fighting for his life. And so we're sending love, and it causes people like the 3 of us to think of how we're, you know, putting our love in what we do. I love how you said it, Jess, using our gifts to support others and making sure that, you know, folks are touched in a specific manner. I mean, when you think of, you're a Baltimore native, Jess, you didn't go far. You made a choice, and a smart person like you could have studied abroad. You could have went anywhere. You decided to stay right in Maryland, go to College Park, and do your studies that way. And it's really taking you on a journey of continuing to pour love back into the city. This mission of this show is, again, to spread love and thoughts about the future of the Black families in Baltimore. Just tell us a little bit about what work you're, really passionate about today, and how you believe that work impacts the lives of the future residents in Baltimore City.
Mm-hmm. And thank you. And I'll just take a step back. So I'm from Baltimore. I grew up between O'Donnell Heights and Cherry Hill, mm-hmm. which are two very distinct neighborhoods, right? And have a lot of the similar characteristics, even by design, like one way in, in Cherry Hill, one way out, or like, you go in O'Donnell Heights and you got to maneuver to get, and all of that is by design. And as a young person, you don't realize that, it's not until maybe you step outside of your community that you see like, oh, structural racism, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, this is why it was so hard for me. This is why it took me almost 2 hours to get to school, right? Like, because of these things. And growing up here, we didn't have shows like that. I didn't have shows like this, that I could hear people who look like me, maybe a little bit older, talking about these experiences. And so it wasn't like, you should stay. It was like, get out, get the F out, son, get out, right? You kind of smart, get out, right? And so I went away for a while, and when I came back home, I knew I wanted to bring my gifts and skills, but I didn't know how. And I didn't know what that would look like. And I'm tying this into what I'm doing now. But I'm saying that because I think it's important for young people to not have to leave, right? And I came back right after Freddie Gray was murdered, and it wasn't because it was like, oh, I want to come back and help. I needed to come home. Like, I had been dealing with some stuff, and I needed to come home. And I also was like, it would be great if I could be here. And so I haven't left, right? And because I was able to find opportunities and ways to plug in. But again, there wasn't a path for me. It wasn't like, stay and do this thing and help. It was like, you should go and then maybe come back. So I appreciate spaces like this to have these conversations. Yeah. So my work is, I'm an organization development practitioner. What does that mean, right? What does that mean? That essentially means I work with people and companies and organizations to help them create conditions for success, create conditions for transformation, for deeper impact, for more equitable impact, for more creativity. So I work with change makers, people who want to be better and more intentional in their work. And I've done that for years. And right now that work, it looks like a whole bunch of stuff. So as you mentioned, Eze and I recently helped produce a series of recommendations for the city around cultural policy, how we think that arts and culture can really help shape and transform the city, how we want the city to value arts and culture. It's not just an add-on, but like really putting investment behind it. My work has also looked like recently working with a group of funders and local organizers to co-create a grant that would be given to organizations that are doing work around community safety. Not, which is really the opposite of, we're gonna call it cops, right? It's like, no, how can we use food justice, dance, music, wellness in order to prevent the need for public safety, right? Which we know typically is like, you call it cops. So helping shape things like that. And I'm also working with local artist, Shan Wallace, who is brilliant, visionary, to reimagine the yard sign. So if you think about like a political yard sign, we want to actually like create dope yard signs that people want to put up that say really powerful, inspiring things that spark imagination across neighborhoods. So I'm all kinds of stuff. I got my hands in a lot of pots.
Yeah. But a lot of pots, but all going to the same thing, which is spreading the love of
Yep.
utilizing arts and culture as a way, as a modality, as a mechanism for change, as a mechanism for business, as a mechanism for unity, healing, right? And so it's awesome to hear that you have those things working and moving in a specific way.
Thank you. Yeah, yes. And I found that has been the theme of my practice across the board, right? So for a while, I worked inside of an foundation. So I was working inside of an institution, still doing that kind of work, and now doing it, through my own practice. And what I find is that I think there's a crisis of imagination. Which for me is like, we can look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like, okay, I need shelter, I need food, I need water, I need safety, and then it's more like I need relationships, and it goes. And I feel like we live in a city that has so much compounded trauma. And we say that all the time, but it's true. And I think it's hard for people sometimes to project themselves into a future outside of what they see, right? Like what does it look like when we all are healthy and we all are well and thriving, and there's no question, right? A while ago, I was doing this project when I was asking people to think about 2034, right? And I'm like, just think about 2034, what's happening? People would freak out. Me too, right? Like, it was hard for me to think about that far ahead, because that would mean I would have to reckon with some stuff, right? And like, ooh, what does that mean? But I feel like it's not only until we start really starting to see ourselves as like healthy and whole and well, and our communities as such, like that's when the pivot, like that's when we can really start to plan and work towards that. But you got to see it first. And I've been thinking a lot about like, what's the prerequisite? Like, what's the warm up to get people even in a space to imagine? Because it's like throwing somebody in a cold pool, right? Like you gotta so I've been thinking a lot about that in my work too. And I don't have an answer yet,
I think it's a continuous journey of that. I think imagination, that it's written somewhere with, without vision, people perish.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to have some vision of yourself, some vision of your community, some vision of better, some hope, What do you think, Eze, about that? I mean, you and I talk about that imagination piece and staying creative for, I don't know, man. What you I know you got something good on it, because me and you
I see you over there.
I know, because he got he doing this thing right here. That means he about to say some important shit when he start going like this. Is like,
no, I love what you were saying about the amount of trauma that people deal with here. And I think where Dermell is going is he and I have been having a lot of discussions and intentional, dealing with things in an intentional way, keeping that in mind. You know what I'm saying? Because
right.
I think that a lot of times, specifically in Baltimore, Black Baltimoreans are cast off as these misfits, these degenerates, and people don't want to work with us. They don't want to do stuff with us. And you're never taking into account the fact that, you're talking to somebody whose mother OD'd and died when they were little. You're talking to somebody who saw, this is me, who saw, people murdered at 6 years old right in front of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, who grew up with a lot of these things that in the midst of growing up, you're taught to suppress it. Don't talk about it. Don't deal with it. Just move on. You strong. You got this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What, you a chump? You know what I mean? And so people from Baltimore, and then people from Baltimore have this reputation of being tougher than the rest, right? Because we're able to go through those things. But there's never that conversation of, well, how are you dealing with this? You know what I'm saying? Like how are you handling it? What are the healthy alternatives you're using in your life to move forward? So I just kind of got excited when you talk about that. And I get excited a lot of times when people acknowledge the amount of trauma that people from here deal with. You know what I mean? I didn't realize so many things were not normal
Right.
until I left Baltimore.
Yeah.
When I went in the Navy, I didn't realize that so many things were not normal. You know what I mean? One time in particular comes to mind. I was playing with one of my shipmates. We were on watch, and this young white guy from, somewhere in suburbia America. And, we're on watch, so we're both armed, you know what I mean? And I jokingly pulled my weapon out and I put it in his back, and I was like, "Give me your money." You know what I mean? And, and then I put it back in my holster, and I laughed, and we kept on with our watch. But when we got off watch, he ran up on me hours later. And he was like, "Dude, don't you ever in your life do that." He didn't see what I thought was funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. To him, that was not funny, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? But it's the type of stuff that I grew up on. We'd be on the corner, somebody run up behind you with the joint and put it in your back, and you shaking, and then you turn around and it's your man, and then y'all laughing like, "Oh, boy, you was scared to death." You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I realized, I was like, "Oh man, like I'm dealing with things that most people just are not dealing with."
Right. Like nobody has run up to him ever, maybe with a, and did that. So what does that mean? I think about the scale of the trauma, right? So compounded, right? I think about and we don't have to do trauma tales, because that's also a thing that we like to do, right? I'm slipping into it. I'm like, let me tell you.
Try to outdo each other. Guess what happened to me? Guess what happened to me?
That's a thing. And I think it's important to name it, right? Because we could all day, we could do it, right? Yeah. But I think about young people, and this seems very like a little thing, but I think about how many young people in Baltimore are well rested. Okay, so walk with me. So I live in Reservoir Hill. I what I call trap adjacent, right? Like there's no blue light on my block, but right down the street there's a blue light. Right. That's fine. I'm asleep. I hear like 14 gunshots, middle of the night. I wake up, and then I'm like, what do I do with that? Like, how do I hold this? Right. And so I end up kind of staying up for the rest of the night. And the next day I'm exhausted. And it's like, do I tell my colleagues like, "Oh yeah, I heard 14 gunshots. I couldn't go back to sleep." And then I think about like young people who are expected to be in school every day, who might hear that on a regular basis, right? Like, and so again, how can I expect and want to encourage them to imagine when they might just be tired, right? Like, how do we start to address that? And I wonder about art, like what's the role of arts and culture and really pulling out some of the dynamics that we all are dealing with living in the city.
Yeah, art, art is life. Art is a major part. It has to be, a part of our daily routine, in my opinion. That's not a day goes by that I don't listen to music. Music is a part of my shower routine, a part of my, getting in the car, part of my de-escalation from a day of work or meetings. And so, visual art, you were mentioning earlier, is a part of it. Everything, what we're looking this right now, this Zoom was designed by visual artists. Every piece of clothing that we all have, the couch you're sitting on, the pictures behind Eze, but everything is art. And so we have to get back to making sure that art is an integral part of the development of our young people. That, like you said, it's not just a throw on, it's not just the add on, it's not just the in case we have a few extra dollars, in case we find the supplies. No, let's intentionalize it, because not only is it supporting academic success, but it's supporting that social and interpersonal thing that we're talking about right now, that building our self-esteem, building our confidence, the ability to use art to heal. So when you think about art in praxis, tell me, how you see that supporting the folks that live in the city, but also, again, the future of this city. How can your work through as director of art in praxis, the founder, the principal, how can you, you know, explain to Eze and I, and explain to our viewers and those that will be checking us out on social media later, give us the real nitty gritty, so to speak, of what your vision is for it.
Yes. Okay, great. So praxis, the word praxis really means the application of theory, right? Like it's applying something. And so for me, I see the work that I do in organizations, you know, organizations that may be cultural arts organizations, but also social justice organizations and foundations. Like I'm working across the board. I'm always thinking about how do we bring cultural practices into the work, right? Like a budget, for example. A budget is a story. It is telling people what the organization's priorities are, right? And so what kind of story do you want to tell? Like what's the most audacious, bold story you can tell? And let's make that be reflected in the budget, right? So it's bringing those, the ways of thinking into like the day-to-day of organizational development. And so one of the things that I'm interested in and thinking about for the future of the organization, the company, is I want to take data and white papers and reports that nobody reads, but has so much critical information in it that we all should know, right? And if we were armed with that data, we could be better advocates, we could be better, just and whatever, like across the board, activists, we could be more informed residents. I want to take that data and I want to work with an ensemble of artists, all kinds, like visual, musicians, theater people, and animate it and like pull out key stories and really like tell those stories so people can see like, oh, I know why we need to vote for this law, because now I understand what that means. And I've done that. You know, there was a right after Trayvon Martin's murder, I co-produced an event that had Black mothers talking about what it meant to be a mother in that moment. Yeah. And we had a judge on the panel, and we were using data, and he was like, oh, I know on Monday I'm gonna make a different decision or more informed decision because of what I saw in this meeting, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, how might arts and culture help like personalize really important data that people just don't even get? So that's what I'm thinking about in the near future, hopefully, with the work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That you know, data is important, you know, and you know from working in the foundation that a lot of decisions are made by what's written on a paper. But
don't get me started. Don't even get me started.
Yeah. It's just that I like the work that you're doing, and I love, you know, the thought process around it. And I always talk to Eze about this too, with his vision and movement of Epic Fan for the city, that there's one thing there's a written word and then there's a living word.
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, right. So we can put a bunch of stuff on paper, right? And we can read, and it can have all the data and everything lined up, graphs and charts and numbers, right? And we know, of course, some of our white counterparts like to unfortunately fudge the numbers and fudge the data, right? Yes. That's how they get the funding, and that's how they get the ability. And then we come and we're trying to be honest and really put down what we know we're doing.
That's right.
And we don't get it.
But even the questions are dumb, right? So like, we got the data, but I tell people all the time, well, can we look at this whack question? Like, what are you really trying to get at? Right. Because, you know, you get this information, and I'm putting on my like former funder hat, right? Like, you get this information that we asked for, but it's not helping us make better decisions. We're making the same dumbass decisions that we've made, and you want to get a different outcome, you know? So it's the data, and it's also, what are you really asking? And what are we deeming as most important? And is it true, right? Like, is it really most important? I feel like organizations on the ground doing the work should determine what data should be collected. Like, actually, like, this matters. What you've been talking about doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. And you're judging whether program, this organization, this what gets what they need to support and serve the people off of something that
That's right.
may not be true,
And
may
you know
not
nothing
be,
about.
nothing about. It may be outdated, even if it is true. You still got numbers from 1999 that you
Right.
plugging in to make it look like something. And
Yeah.
so it's important that I love how you broke down the word praxis, meaning, you know, in practicum, in actuality, in actually making it happen versus, hey, here's a bunch of reports and here's a bunch of this blah, 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 and lives aren't being impacted.
Right.
People aren't being changed for the better. You know, and so, you know, I know that Eze knows that as a former community organizer, mobilizing people, you know, he always has told you tell one of your stories now, because I can't tell all your stories. You get me when I think about the stuff you taught me, man, about that. I always get excited because of just what Jess is talking about right now, yo. It's like, what you doing? Like, you can be talking about what you're doing, and then you can just be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned from organizing, and I went through the same school of organizing, the Gamaliel Foundation that Barack Obama went through as a community organizer. And one of the things that they teach you is, you know, in mobilizing people is to find people's self-interest, right? And so there's selflessness, there's selfishness, right? And we both know what those are. And that medium point is self-interest, and it's yourself among others. How not only does what you're doing benefit you as a person, but it benefits the whole, and then we can hold each other accountable in that way. So you have these conversations where, you know, maybe somebody's not feeling like it that day. You know what I'm saying? They're not up to it. You know what I mean? And you gotta convince them. You know what I mean? But because you know that person, you can touch them gently in that place and say, "Well, I thought that you wanted to do this, that, whatever. I thought that this meant, you know what I mean? Give me a little more, and I bet your daughter will be proud, your son will be proud. You know, but those kind of conversations can only come out of you getting to know that person and really understanding where they're coming from, what means the most to them, what they cherish. And so it's less of a, you know, when you look at community organizing versus political organizing, like political organizing is very manipulative and very, you know, it uses people. You know, community organizing was more about building, you know what I'm saying? And really like making sure that everybody involved has buy-in, you know, genuine buy-in, not just we need this amount of people, we need bodies in the building for no reason. So and that's what I'm hearing from you, Jess, is like this is much more about, you know, community building, relationship building. That's very important, I think, in anything we're doing.
You know, I think and what I'm hearing from you is like this need to humanize, right? And like make things personal. But I'll say that some people get freaked out by that because it means I have to see you, right? Oh, you're a person. It's not just a website, or I can just go to your little program. You know what I mean? Like, no, these are people that are impacted by decisions that other people make on their behalf, right? And so, which is wild.
Wild.
I'll give a one example. J Pope, right? Me and J Pope. Y'all know J Pope. J Pope, she's dope singer, MC, songwriter, performer, really, really dope. I met J Pope when she was in college at Towson. And I was a young organizer. I hadn't gone through the training that I was just talking about I've been through, right? So I had to do this thing where I organized several different college campuses to do a healthcare day of action. At that time, you know, we were looking at 44, 45 million people in America without healthcare. So I had several colleges on the same day at the same time signing up people to be healthcare voters. Well, I just really grabbed students and gave them the materials and got them to do it. On the day of, J Pope did not answer the phone for me, ignored me, disappeared on me, right? The whole time we had been working together, she was telling me, I sing and rap. And I kind of blew it off like, okay, yeah, whatever, you and 50,000 other people, right? Months later, I walk into Organic Soul Tuesdays, and J Pope is on stage, killing it. And I was like, oh, you do this. like you really do this for real. You know what I mean? In retrospect, when I started, learning more and going through my training, I realized that I had missed an opportunity to create a relationship and a connection with her. I dismissed her because I just need you to do this, shorty. Like, I just need, look, here go the thing, here go the stuff, here go the clipboards, all that. I just need you to do that. Don't come at me with all that and all that. You rapping, you singing, all that and all that. You know what I mean? But in real life, I had missed an opportunity. And I thought, at first I was like, dang, shorty just flaked on me. She just disappeared. It wasn't important to her at that time in her life. Right. And we didn't have that kind of connection for her to, follow through on the thing. And I learned a valuable lesson then. And now it's like, I take a minute to at least listen to everybody's stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if you're coming to me with your music, that means, one, you think that I'm somebody that you think should hear your stuff, and you want my feedback. And so now I take a moment, or I try to take a moment to at least listen to, as many, everybody. I can't get to everybody, but I do try to listen to everybody now, because I'm like, you never know who you talking to, you know what I mean, until you listen to it. And lo and behold,
and that's the same thing with people's stories. When you, like what you're saying, Jess, when you think somebody's telling you a story or telling you about their new movement, their mission, their new nonprofit, their new business, we do the same thing with that too. We try to give a polite ear, but if it ain't on the right day, if it ain't the right sun ain't shining at the right time, we don't feel like it that day, we moving on. And that person could have been feeding the energy that we want, because life is about relationships and decisions, and the decisions we make about relationships. That's what life is about, right? It's all about relationship. It's all about decision, and those things have to coincide together regularly. And so it's a powerful reflection that you just said, Eze, even teaching us briefly. If anybody was just watching the show about tomorrow, Eze just gave you a powerful lesson from the School of Organizing about selflessness, selfishness, and the self-interest in the middle. I'll never forget that. Now you just said that, right, Jess? That was good.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, how can we continue that journey together as three people wanting to see, three Baltimoreans, right? Wanting to see better for our city. What other steps can we make, Jess, that you think can put us on a trajectory of a beautiful future for the people in Baltimore City?
That's a great question. I feel like I should ask that anytime I'm in a group of people. I'm like, what should we do? I think part of it is, I was talking to an elder, a friend of mine, and she was like, you know what's innovative? Remembering. And I was like, yes. So like, really, I think before we jump out in general and just say, this is the next new thing, the next big thing, like really thinking about, has this happened before, right? Like, do we have an example? Because I always think it's important to talk about the lineage of a thing, right? An idea. One of my clients that the fund that I mentioned I'm working with, I was like, this was inspired by the youth fund. This was inspired by things before that. Like, we need to actually name where this comes from so that we don't forget, and so that we don't make the same mistakes, right? Like, so we can actually like project a future where we are doing the different thing. Like, how are we going to do a different thing? So I think part of our work is like just doing a quick scan and seeing what already exists that we know is powerful and that is working, right? And then like lift that up. Because I feel like we could do more of that too, right? Like actually amplifying work that's already happening and figuring out how to get people supports to take it to the next level, and asking them questions about like, are you imagining? What is it? I used to ask people when I was a funder, I'm like, okay, so what does it look like when you achieve the mission of the organization? What?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got this nice mission. We here to help. Well, what if they're all helped, right? Like, and so I think
because we so used to the grind, we so used to the fight. What our boy Ed say the other day, Easy? What'd he say?
He said, when you're used to winning, you can't see yourself losing. And when you're used to losing, you can't see yourself winning.
Good God Almighty. It just gave me goosebumps again. Good God Almighty. Because we're saying it like from as Baltimoreans having to feel like we're always in struggle mode.
right.
We're always trying to achieve the goal. What does it look? That's a powerful thing. You just helped me because you just stumped me. And I'm sitting over here going, yeah, what if we did?
That, right.
What would that look like? Because I'm so used to the grind.
We got to keep asking that question. I think we gotta stunt everybody, right? Like, I think we need to ask that question. So Easy, you know, when we were doing the transition work, we asked the city a question, like, what would it look like if arts and culture was fully embedded in public life? Like, what would that look like? And we invited people to call in, and we got hundreds of voicemails and texts from people, you know, and I think it was the invitation to like imagine that people felt, you know, like called to do. And I feel like we need more of that in the city. Absolutely. And we need to amplify the good work that's already happening, and just continue to be in relationship and conversation, and like work through some shit when things don't go the way we planned, right? When someone is harmed, like how do we come back to each other, right? Like that's a question I have too. Like,
how do we reconcile? Let's reconcile. Yeah. So, don't give up. We give up on each other too easy.
Yes, we do.
As soon as there's a challenge, soon as something don't feel good, because we crave comfort. So if it's uncomfortable, then we throw our hands up. We're ready to walk away from the relationship. We're ready to walk away from the opportunity. We're ready to walk away from the service, from the work, and just say, you know what? I don't like so-and-so. They made me uncomfortable that day because they challenged me, or they didn't do what they said they was going to do. So now I shouldn't be doing. Maybe, you know, Black people is always, maybe this is a sign. It's a sign because this is a sign because we couldn't. They said they was going to be there and they didn't show up. This is a sign. I'm in the wrong thing. I got to stop doing this work and save these babies. Yeah. No, that was one person's decision. And how are we going to respond to that? Man, this has been powerful. Tell us, Jessica, and tell everybody who's viewing, how can they reach you, your website, your social media?
So my social media, I'm on Instagram a lot, and it's at Jess, Jess, Solomazing, 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 Mazing. Yes, Solomazing, Jess Solomazing. Right. And you can find my work at ARTNIN Praxis, PRAXIS.co. And yeah, I'm happy to be in conversation with folks. This has been great. Lovely. Yes, I'm like so excited for the work that y'all are doing and the thoughtfulness around just having these kinds of conversations. And I do want to, you know, think about like, how might I support this work and like help amplify this show, this channel, and infuse some of those questions about visioning and imagining in that as well.
The imagination thing is touching my soul, I mean, completely today, because that's everything, in my opinion. You know, Albert Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. And so, you know, the imagination that we need to impart for ourselves as the folks on our tier, and then with our peers and how we're working and building, we can't give up. We got to keep each other excited and creatively refreshed. And that's about having imaginative conversations, right? We have to imagine and image ourselves, right, in a particular way. Those words coincide for a reason. Your imagination becomes your image, your self-image. What do you see for your neighborhood, your environment, your city, your work? And so when we think of Leaders of Tomorrow Youth Center pushing this arts education mission, Art in Praxis moving the way of mobilizing folks around practicum in the community as it relates to art, and thinking about Albert Einstein's quote of imagination is more important than knowledge. We have such a journey to continue going on in love with the LOVE. Everything we're doing is in love. And so we're thankful for the amazing Jessica Solomon, and we're thankful for Eze Jackson and his brilliance. And one more time, as we're going on the show about tomorrow, just tell people one more time, Jess, where can they get to you?
Jess Solo Amazing at Jess Solo Amazing, Instagram, Twitter. My website is artandpraxis.co. And my email address, you can just jess@artandpraxis.co. So thank you again, Dee and Darnell and Brian. This was amazing.
Awesome. This is great. And the show about tomorrow, folks, we discussed the future of the Black family. Shout out to From Baltimore with Love, our executive producer, Brian Greenspan Dawkins. We love Dana and Lauren for leading LTYC, Eze Jackson and Epic Fam, Lady Breon with the Black Arts District, revitalizing Baltimore over in the wonderful Pennsylvania Avenue neighborhood. And we're thankful for Morgan State University, the folks over there that have shown us so much love as it relates to the show about tomorrow and the School of Urban Social Work. We believe in this city. We love this city. We love the people of this city. Let's support each other. Let's support organizations. Let's support the leadership, and let's support the families and continue to build as we see a better Baltimore and a better future for all of us that live in and around the city. We're thankful for you guys. Have a great weekend. Keep learning about what's happening with the vaccination. Keep learning about it. I'm not encouraging somebody to do it one way or the other, but I want to encourage folks to keep learning about all the options of the vaccinations, what you can do before you take it, how you should be drinking water, eating clean, exercise before, after. I want to spread that love. We're in a sensitive time, and we can't ever do a show without mentioning what's happening in the pandemic, because we're still in the pandemic. Yes, the sun is about to start shining and the weather's changing and the days are longer again, but let's be careful. Let's take care of each other, hand washing, mask wearing, pay attention to your body. But just please learn more about Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson before you make your decisions. And let's take care of each other and do everything in love.
For sure. Peace.
Y'all the shit. I love y'all too. Y'all
Love
great.
you too, man.
We gotta have Jess back. Jess might need to come back another time.
Yeah,
This
no,
was
right?
so good.
Yeah. Have a good one. Have a good weekend.
Take care, y'all.
Peace.
Okay, take care. Peace.